I never thought my life could turn into something so dark because of a single iMessage notification that happened to appear on the screen. That night, when I walked into the living room of our house in Beverly Hills, all I wanted was a peaceful evening after a long day working in the financial district of Los Angeles. I loosened my tie, placed my briefcase on the couch, and at that exact moment, Olivia's phone lit up. A message hovered on the screen. "I miss you already." It wasn't sent to me. In that instant, my heart felt as though a cold, invisible hand had crushed it. I froze for a few seconds, wondering if I had seen it wrong. Olivia was in the kitchen, the sound of chopping steady and calm, as if there wasn't a storm forming inside me. I unlocked her phone, even though I knew I shouldn't. But when a man senses his wife is cheating, he stops listening to any moral rules. The message opened, and I only managed to see the recipient's name before Olivia stepped out of the kitchen. Marcus Rivera. That familiar name made my head spin. Marcus, my friend for 15 years, the man I considered family. I quickly locked the phone as if it had burned my hand. Olivia studied me for a moment, her eyes briefly pausing before turning into her usual soft smile. "You're home early?" she asked, as if the world were still peaceful. I responded in the calmest voice I could manage, hiding everything shaking inside me. But in my heart, things had already begun to crack. The evening passed with dinner and small talk, but my mind drifted elsewhere. I remembered the recent weeks. Olivia coming home later than usual, constantly claiming students needed extra help. She rarely looked me in the eyes when speaking. I had assumed it was work stress. Now I knew the real reason. After dinner, Olivia went upstairs to prepare her lesson plans. I stayed in the living room, the warm yellow light casting long shadows across the floor. I checked her phone again when I was sure she couldn't see me. The message was gone, completely erased. Only the notification remained. That alone convinced me she was hiding something serious. I sank into the chair, closed my eyes, feeling as though I had been slapped. I questioned why Marcus, someone who had been with me through so many years, could betray me so cruelly. A part of me wanted to run upstairs, confront Olivia and ask her, why? But logic held me back. If I exploded now, all evidence would disappear forever. I needed the truth. Undeniable, irrefutable truth. I opened Find My iPhone and quietly marked Olivia's location. I noted the time, her behavior, the flicker of guilt I thought I saw before dinner. Every small detail mattered, because I sensed this wasn't a momentary mistake, but a prolonged, secret affair. When Olivia went to bed early, I pretended to stay downstairs for work. The silence of night wrapped around the house. I opened my laptop, logged into iCloud Family Sharing. I never imagined I would become the kind of husband who had to do this, but betrayal always turns a man into a different version of himself. Bit by bit, I searched for clues. But Olivia was careful, nothing clear. But that emptiness only strengthened my certainty. Before going upstairs, I stood on the staircase, staring at the house I once believed symbolized peace. Now it looked like an empty shell, hollowed out from within by broken trust no one else could see. I entered the bedroom and saw Olivia sleeping peacefully, her face as beautiful as the first day we met. But I no longer felt peace. Silently, I told myself, a warning meant for my own future. If there is anything hidden, I will find it. And when I do, there will be no turning back. I couldn't sleep at all that night. Every time I closed my eyes, the image of that message resurfaced vividly, like a blade slicing straight through my mind. Near dawn, I finally drifted off for a few minutes. But even the slightest notification sound from the phone woke me, as if my nerves had become unnaturally sharp. I knew that if I didn't uncover the truth, it would consume me day after day. So the next evening, I decided to follow Olivia. She said she had an extra lesson with a student preparing for an art exam. Her voice was calm, but her eyes shifted slightly. A small detail I had never noticed before. Yet now it felt like evidence of something hidden. I hugged her as usual, wishing her a good session. Olivia smiled, but I sensed a tremor in her, like a faint ripple across the surface of water. As soon as she drove out of the driveway, I counted to 5 and got into my own car. I kept a distance of a few blocks, far enough to avoid her rearview mirror, but close enough not to lose track. The location on Find My iPhone showed she was heading towards Santa Monica, not the school where she usually taught. The farther she drove, the colder I felt inside. When she neared Santa Monica Beach, Olivia turned onto a side street leading towards small beachfront hotels. I turned off my headlights, slowed down, and parked 3 blocks away. I didn't want her to see my car. I got out, put on a cap, and walked in her direction. My heart pounded, but my mind was strangely clear. It felt as though I had stepped into a parallel version of my life, where betrayal was no longer a concept, but a tangible reality. From a distance, I saw Olivia stop in front of a modest 3-story hotel. She looked around, then went inside. I hid behind a wall, observing every movement. Less than 3 minutes later, a man approached from the back parking lot. The dim yellow light made me squint, but I didn't need long. I recognized that walk instantly. Marcus. My throat tightened. I thought I must be seeing wrong. But as Marcus approached the entrance, took out his phone and began texting, surely to Olivia, it became undeniable. I clenched my fists so tightly that my nails dug into my skin. Part of me wanted to rush over, grab him, and scream for the whole world to know what he was. But logic kept me frozen. In that moment, I knew I couldn't act emotionally. I needed the truth. I needed the whole story, not an impulsive incident. I pulled out my phone and quickly took a few photos from afar. The first pieces of evidence. Not clear, but enough for a lawyer to understand something was wrong. A few minutes later, Olivia and Marcus came out. They didn't hold hands or hug too openly, but one only had to look at the way they stood close. The way Olivia smiled softly when Marcus whispered something into her ear, to know they had crossed a line. When Olivia lifted her hand to fix her hair, and Marcus lightly placed his hand on her back, my stomach tightened. Every tiny gesture felt like a needle piercing me. They walked together toward the beach, then stopped under a dim light. I hid behind an SUV, watching. Marcus leaned down and gave Olivia a brief but intimate hug. She responded naturally, as if it was something familiar. There was no thunder striking down, no dramatic movie scene, only a deep silence eating away at my chest. She, the woman I called my wife, was hugging my closest friend. When they eventually separated and walked off in opposite directions, I stood still for a long time watching them. My mind held no screaming rage, only a cold calculation. If I reacted now, I would only have emotion. But if I stayed silent, I would have evidence. I pulled out my phone again, took more photos, then walked back to my car. On the drive home, I didn't turn on the radio. No music, no calls. Only the quiet hum of the tires rolling through the night. I tried to keep my hands from shaking, tried to steady my breathing. When I got home, Olivia wasn't there yet. I sat in the living room, staring into the empty space, feeling like I had just lost something far too large to name. But beneath the ache was a growing, quiet determination. I knew what I had to do. When Olivia walked in nearly an hour later, she smiled softly. "The lesson ran long today," she said, and I smiled back, gentle, as if nothing had happened. But inside me, a sentence echoed clearly. If they want to play this game, I'll let them play it to the end. After the night in Santa Monica, I tried to act as normal as possible. I knew that if Olivia sensed I was suspicious, she would erase every remaining trace. So in the following days, I played the role of a husband even more attentive than usual. I made her coffee in the morning, asked more about her work, even offered to drive her to school a few times. Each action felt like a step in a chess game I had to play, gently, carefully. Olivia reacted strangely. She appeared grateful, but I noticed the small tension in her eyes every time I got close. As if she feared that any question from me could trigger a conversation she wasn't ready to face. That only strengthened my conviction that she was hiding something deeper than a simple secret meeting. I started by placing a small recording device under the coffee table in the living room, the place where Olivia often sat to call her students or friends. I also placed a mini camera in her workspace, disguised in a small potted plant. I wasn't proud of it, but my trust had been crushed so thoroughly that there was no room left for naive decency. That evening, Olivia came home unusually early. She stepped into the kitchen, set down her bag without looking at me like she usually did. I asked, "Home early today?" She quickly answered, "Student canceled," but her voice trembled slightly. I smiled, walked over and placed my hand on her shoulder. "It's fine. I'll make dinner." Olivia nodded, smiled weakly, then went straight to the bedroom to change. Behind that smile, what was it? Guilt? Fear? Or anxiety that her secret would be exposed? I wasn't sure, but I knew she had changed. During dinner, Olivia tried to appear relaxed. She talked about yesterday's lesson, about her students, about the paintings she was helping them finish. She talked more than usual, as if trying to fill the silence we both sensed, but didn't mention. I looked at her, nodded, smiled, playing the patient, gentle husband. Meanwhile, inside me was a storm of pain, anger, and cold clarity. When Olivia entered her workspace, I sat in the living room, put on my headphones, and tested the recorder. I heard the noises of her lesson planning, then a brief silence, and then the vibration of a phone. Olivia whispered, "I'm at home. No, he doesn't suspect anything. Yes, Sunday is fine. Same place." Hearing it felt like someone was tearing pieces out of me. She was talking to him. Marcus, the man I trusted most. I paused the recorder and put it back. I didn't want to listen further because I knew if I did, I might lose the control I was fighting to maintain. But at the same time, my determination grew stronger. They thought I was clueless. They thought I believed their innocent explanations. They thought I was living inside the script they created. But the truth was, I was rewriting the script, one they had no idea existed. A while later, Olivia walked out, her expression calm, as if no phone call had happened. She asked if I wanted to watch a movie. I agreed, and we sat on the sofa watching a light comedy. She leaned on my shoulder, and I placed my arm around her. Anyone looking in would think we were a happy couple. But only I knew that beneath that peace was an opening abyss. When the movie ended, Olivia went to bed first. I stayed downstairs a little longer, observing the house. It was beautiful, full of light, filled with memories I once cherished. But now, everything felt like it no longer belonged to me. It felt like I was living in my own home as a temporary guest. Before going to bed, I entered Olivia's workspace, opened her laptop, and checked her browsing history, emails, everything I could. But she had erased everything. That made me even more restless, and even more convinced that what I saw in Santa Monica was only the tip of the iceberg. I closed the laptop, let out a long breath, and stared at my reflection on the black screen. When had I become this person? Someone who investigates his own wife, follows her, records her, takes pictures. But if I didn't, who would protect my dignity? When I lay down beside Olivia, listening to her steady breathing, I felt the invisible distance between us more clearly than ever. A distance words couldn't fill, nor kindness repair. I closed my eyes and whispered to myself, like a declaration, I will tear off their masks, but I'll do it my way. Calm, precise, undeniable. Sunday arrived faster than I expected. Throughout the week, Olivia seemed to be trying to hide the growing anxiety in her eyes. She woke up earlier, put on makeup more carefully, checked her phone more often. Every action felt like another small piece confirming that what I had heard in the recording wasn't my imagination. She and Marcus were still continuing, and they believed I knew nothing. That morning, Olivia said she needed to go out to buy some teaching supplies and might visit a colleague. I watched her put on her coat, fix her hair, then slip her wallet into her bag as if everything was perfectly normal. I didn't ask anything. I only said, "Drive safe." The smile she gave me was a little tense, but she tried her best to act natural. The moment the door closed, I stood still for a few seconds, feeling my heartbeat slow and steady. No more trembling. No more confusion. Only cold clarity. I grabbed my phone, opened Find My iPhone, and her location icon moved slowly on the map like a guide I could no longer misunderstand. I drove about 5 minutes behind her, The road toward Santa Monica Beach was as busy as any weekend. Sunlight reflected off the water. Pedestrians walked along the sidewalks. Cafes opened early, and the smell of salt mixed with the cool air. I watched Olivia's location stop near the beachfront hotels, the same area where I had seen Marcus last time. I parked farther away, put on a jacket and cap, then walked toward the hotel. I saw Olivia standing on the second-floor balcony hallway, glancing down at the street as if waiting for someone. A few minutes later, Marcus appeared from behind the hotel, hands in his pockets, walking with confidence and excitement. He walked up the stairs, not looking around at all, then stopped in front of Olivia. The moment they saw each other, without speaking, I understood this wasn't their first time. Olivia smiled faintly, and Marcus touched her back in a way that clearly wasn't new to either of them. They both entered room 208. As the door closed, I hid behind a wall, pulled out the small camera I had brought, and recorded everything. This was the evidence I knew Jonathan needed. I had rented the room across from theirs the night before. I called the hotel, booked room 207, and made sure the keys were picked up without raising suspicion. I walked up to the second floor, entered the room, and stood behind the peephole, watching the hallway. It was quiet, only the hum of the ventilation and occasional footsteps from distant guests. About 10 minutes later, I heard a small laugh from room 208 before Marcus and Olivia stepped out. I hit record, capturing every step, every glance, every gesture they thought no one saw. They walked toward the stairs, standing far closer than necessary. Marcus said something. Olivia responded softly. I couldn't hear the words, but I knew they weren't words between friends. When they stopped at the corner and Marcus leaned in to hug Olivia intimately, a chill ran down my spine. Not from jealousy, but because the truth had become so tangible it couldn't be denied. They were no longer the people I once knew. When they returned to the room, I slowly set the camera down. I opened my laptop and backed up the footage to my hard drive and a spare USB. Everything had to be secured. I couldn't let emotions dictate my actions, but that didn't mean I felt nothing. The pain was still there, but it no longer blinded me. It fueled me. While backing up the file, I heard Marcus speak loudly through the door. Once Liam signs the divorce papers, we'll go public. Olivia answered in a worried voice. He won't sign. He loves me. That sentence made me stop. I stared at the door as if I could see through it. They weren't just cheating, they were planning a future built on my betrayal. I moved closer to the door, angling my head to catch the voices. Marcus continued. Don't worry, I've got it. I'll make him believe. Each word hit like a hammer. There was no longer any doubt. This was deliberate, planned, and they didn't think I was smart enough to notice. I let out a small laugh, not out of joy, but out of the sheer irony. Marcus thought he was above me. Olivia thought I loved her too much to suspect anything. They didn't know that their arrogance would be what destroyed them. By the time I left the hotel, the sun was already setting. Golden light stretched across the water. I walked back to my car with a strange sense of calm. No more chaos in my mind. No more crushing pain. Only certainty. I had everything I needed. In the car, I opened my phone and called Jonathan. When he picked up, I said just one simple sentence, enough to begin everything that was coming. It's time to start. After leaving the hotel and hearing Marcus say, I'll make him believe, I no longer felt the pain I felt before. Instead, there was a clarity so cold it almost felt unreal. I knew I had to take another step forward. I couldn't just gather scattered pieces anymore. I needed to push them into revealing everything, to collapse the trap they didn't even know existed. And to do that, I had to make them believe completely that I suspected nothing. The next morning I woke up earlier than Olivia, prepared breakfast as if I were the most devoted husband in the world. When she walked out of the bedroom, yawning and tying her hair, I placed a glass of orange juice and a plate of pancakes in front of her. Olivia looked surprised for a second, then smiled. You're so thoughtful today. I simply shrugged. I think we should spend more time together. That sentence made her freeze slightly. Her eyes flickered with something like fear before she covered it with calmness. I noticed everything. After breakfast, I said that we could take a short weekend trip to Palm Springs next week. Olivia was so startled she dropped her fork. She quickly bent down to pick it up, trying to hide her panic. I knew why. Weekends were her meeting schedule with Marcus, and my sudden suggestion shook their plans. She asked softly, "Next weekend? Is that okay? I still have some lessons to finish." I smiled like a man just wanting his wife to relax. "That's fine. We can do it the week after." The relief that washed through her eyes said everything. In the afternoon, I met Jonathan at his office downtown. He reviewed all the evidence I'd collected: videos, recordings, GPS images, and the whispered conversation outside room 208. Jonathan nodded. "This is more than enough for a fault-based divorce." But I told him, I don't want just a divorce. Jonathan looked at me, slightly narrowing his eyes. "You want to file a civil claim against Marcus?" I nodded firmly. "I want them to face legal consequences, not just lose a marriage." Jonathan leaned back, flipping through the documents. "All right, if you want to attack, we'll attack all the way." When I returned home, Olivia was sitting on the sofa watching TV, but her expression was unfocused. The moment she heard me open the door, she turned off the screen quickly, pretending she had been waiting for me. "Long day at work?" she asked quietly. I replied, "Just normal." She seemed like she wanted to say something, but didn't. She was trying to test if I suspected anything. Meanwhile, I was playing my role perfectly. I suggested making dinner together that night. Olivia agreed, but her behavior was strangely forced, as if she was trying too hard to be casual, which only made things more unnatural. While chopping vegetables, she suddenly said, "Do you think I've been acting strange lately?" I turned to her, pretending to be surprised. "Strange? Not at all. I feel like you've been caring for me even more." The sentence made her blush, relief and embarrassment mixing together. I knew exactly what she was thinking. If he thinks I care, then he must not suspect anything. That was exactly what I wanted. At night, I checked the living room recorder again. A short segment captured Olivia calling Marcus. "Today was hard. He's been so good to me. I'm scared." Marcus replied, "Calm down. I've got this. Just a little more time." Hearing that, I turned off the recorder and closed my eyes for a few seconds. Every time I heard their voices, the pain tightened my chest, but I didn't allow it to cloud my judgment. I needed them to continue. I needed them to feel safe. That was the only way to end this game. The next morning, I sent Marcus a message. "Are you free lately? Want to grab a beer?" He replied immediately, "Tonight works. Been a while, bro." The excitement in his message told me he had no suspicions. He thought I was reconnecting, that our friendship was intact. He thought I was an idiot. That night, we met at a bar in Culver City. Marcus slapped my shoulder hard, laughing loudly like nothing had changed. He talked about random things, drank as if nothing in his life was falling apart. I drank with him, laughing, answering, perfectly playing the friend who had no idea the man across from him was ruining his life. When Marcus became tipsy, he leaned on the table and slurred, "Bro, you're the best guy I know. If anything ever happens, just know you're like a brother to me." I smiled. Of course. Inside, the sentence twisted like irony. When we left the bar, I watched Marcus walk toward the parking lot. He turned back, raised his hand, and said, "We should hang out more." I nodded, but in my mind, there was only one thought: hang out more so I can finish this chess match? That night, driving home, a strange lightness settled inside me. Not happiness, but certainty. They were sinking deeper into the pit they had dug themselves. And I, the one they thought was the weakest, was the one holding the map to the entire game. When I returned home, I opened the door quietly so I wouldn't wake Olivia. I looked around the dark, silent house, then went into my study. I organized the evidence, noted dates and times, added the new recordings to the folder. Everything was forming a complete picture. I looked at the laptop screen, hand resting on the mouse, and whispered, "It's time for them to reveal themselves." The evening after I met Marcus at the bar, I came home and realized Olivia still hadn't gone to sleep. She was sitting on the sofa, the warm yellow light making her look more fragile than usual. When I walked in, she looked up and forced a smile, one that flickered and disappeared almost instantly. "You drank a bit much," she said softly, as if testing my reaction. "We haven't seen each other in a while," I answered, my voice so steady that even I was surprised. "He's still as funny as ever." Olivia pressed her lips together, her eyes drifting downward. I knew she was trying to figure out whether Marcus had slipped up. She didn't ask directly, but her subtle worry was as clear as a map laid out before me. I sat next to her and gently lifted her legs to rest on my lap, a gesture that once came naturally, but now worked like a psychological strike. Olivia stiffened slightly before forcing herself to relax. "You've been different lately," she said cautiously. "I don't know if I should be happy or worried." I looked at her, placed my hand gently on her thigh. Different good or different bad? The question threw her off. She couldn't answer, and I knew why. Someone who is cheating always fears the partner who becomes too kind, because kindness is a mirror that reflects their guilt back at them. "Different. More caring," she finally said. "I feel guilty when you treat me too well." Hearing that, a part of me wanted to laugh. Guilt? If she truly felt guilt, she would have stopped. Olivia wasn't afraid of hurting me. She was afraid of being caught. She rested her head on my shoulder. I wrapped an arm around her, the other gently touching her neck. A closeness that convinced her even more that I suspected nothing. I felt her body gradually relax, her breathing slow. And in that moment, I knew my plan was moving precisely where it needed to. That night, when she fell asleep, I went downstairs and opened the recording device. Marcus had called her as soon as I left the bar. Olivia's voice trembled. "Did you say anything? Did he ask anything?" Marcus chuckled casually. "No. He even invited me for a beer. I got the hint." I listened to his calm tone, as if this entire affair wasn't something destructive, but simply an inconvenience. Olivia sighed in relief. "I'm so scared. I keep thinking he's looking at me weird." "Relax," Marcus said. "He loves you too much to ever suspect." I turned off the recorder and sat there in the dark. I wasn't angry anymore. What I felt was a thick emptiness spreading through me. The love I once had for Olivia, the love I thought would last forever, now felt like a shadow that had disappeared long before I realized it. The next day, Marcus texted me. "Bro, free tonight? Another round?" Once again, he walked straight into the open field. I replied, "Maybe later, busy tonight." I needed him to feel I was completely relaxed, but not too eager. A carefree man doesn't worry, but a man who tries too hard forces suspicion. I needed perfect balance. That afternoon, while Olivia was teaching, I organized all the evidence. Videos, messages, GPS logs, recordings. I marked dates and times, sorted them, made backups. I refused to allow a single mistake. While I worked, Olivia video called me from school. Her face appeared on screen with a gentle smile. "What are you doing?" "Sorting documents for work," I said. She nodded, then said the sentence that made me pause. "I'll be home late tonight. A student needs help with their project." I stared directly at the screen and replied warmly, "That's fine. Focus on your work." When the call ended, I opened Find My iPhone. Her location did not move toward the school in a consistent path. She had turned off location sharing. I exhaled slowly, half amused, half cold. They're really getting scared now. That evening, I didn't follow her. I didn't need to. I needed her to think I truly believed she was busy. Around 11 p.m., Olivia returned. She opened the door gently, removing her shoes slowly to avoid noise. I sat on the sofa, pretending to watch a comedy show. When she saw me, she flinched. "You're still up." "Just for a bit," I smiled. She walked behind me and hugged me from behind. A gesture that once felt comforting. Now it felt like something she used to reassure herself. "I love you," she whispered. I turned, looked into her eyes, gently brushed her hair back, and answered with the most genuine tone I could. Words that were truthful, yet carried a blade made to soothe her. "I love you too." She smiled, relieved, believing everything was still okay. But inside me, another sentence echoed clearly. "I love you, but not enough to forgive you." And I knew with certainty they had stepped too far into this play to ever turn back. 3 days later, I decided to begin the next phase of my plan, making Olivia and Marcus believe I had completely lowered my guard, while also pushing them to make more mistakes. When people believe they have already won, they become careless. And that carelessness is exactly what tightens the noose around their own necks. That morning, I suggested going out for breakfast with Olivia. She looked so surprised that she froze for a few seconds. "You're free today?" "Yeah, I want a change of atmosphere." Olivia stared at me, as if trying to decode the emotion behind my words. But I kept my expression relaxed, natural, even impressive to myself. We went to a small cafe near Venice Beach. Olivia stared out the window, hands clasped, occasionally glancing at her purse, where she kept her phone. She hadn't called Marcus since last night, or rather, she hadn't dared to. She feared I would notice something off. I bit the inside of my lip to keep myself from laughing at her unnecessary anxiety. I talked to her about work, about wanting to remodel the kitchen, about planning a trip soon. Everything I said softened her a little. I saw it in the way she looked down, in her hesitant smiles. Maybe the small remaining piece of goodness inside her was starting to stir. But that goodness only made everything feel more hollow to me. When she went to the cafe restroom, her phone vibrated in her bag. I glanced down and saw the screen light up just long enough. Marcus, 3 missed calls. She had no idea I saw it. But that alone told me everything. They were panicking because my silence the past few days was too calm. That afternoon, when we got home, I intentionally told Olivia I would stay up late to work in my office. I knew this gave her freedom to call Marcus, and I needed them to talk. When I heard her footsteps enter the bedroom and the door close, I activated the recorder. It took about 10 minutes for her to make the call. Her voice trembled. "I haven't called for days. I'm scared he suspects," Marcus answered impatiently. "He doesn't. I saw him and there was nothing weird. Last night, I came home late, and I thought he'd ask something. He loves you, that's it. A guy like him would never imagine you could." Marcus paused for a second, then said the sentence that froze me like stone. "Betray him." Olivia didn't respond, only sighed. Marcus continued. "We need to speed things up. If he doesn't sign the divorce, this will drag on forever." Olivia whispered. "I can't bring it up. I'm scared." Marcus answered confidently. "I'll handle it." I sat still, my hand closing into a fist. Not because of anger, but because of how deeply cold I'd become. It was no longer the pain of betrayal. It was the realization of how lowly they had both judged me. That evening, I casually scrolled through my phone and said, "Oh, I talked to the law office today. They asked about this year's tax documents." Olivia almost dropped her glass. "Law office? What law office?" "Oh, company lawyers. Routine checks." I said it vaguely, just enough for her to overthink. I knew she would tell Marcus, and it would make them even more nervous. Sure enough, that night Marcus texted her. "He talked about lawyers? Be careful. Don't reveal anything." The next day, Marcus texted me. "Bro, gym later? It's been a while." His intention was obvious. He wanted to check if I was acting strangely. I agreed. I wanted him to see me completely calm, relaxed, so he would fall into a false sense of victory. At the gym, he laughed, joked, asked questions as if everything was normal. He looked at me several times trying to read me, but I showed him a Liam Prescott who was peaceful, even slightly oblivious. A man who had no idea his wife and best friend were betraying him. After an hour of training, Marcus asked, "You and Olivia good lately?" I smiled. "Good. Why?" He shook his head quickly. "No reason. Just asking." I stood in front of him, looked directly into his eyes and asked, "If something ever happened, like if she felt down, do you think I should pay more attention?" Marcus flinched, but immediately covered it with a forced smile. "Yeah, maybe, who knows?" I nodded and changed the subject. In that moment, I saw it clearly. He was starting to get scared, and when a cheater starts getting scared, they make mistakes. That night, Olivia went to bed early. I sat alone in the dim living room, silence filling the house. I wasn't sad. I wasn't angry. I simply felt everything moving the way I intended, like a river flowing in one direction with no return. I opened my laptop and reviewed all the evidence. The hotel videos, the phone recordings, GPS logs, bar photos, the muffled conversations through the hotel door. Everything was forming a clear picture, a picture that needed only one small push from me, and everything would explode. I closed the laptop, leaned back, and shut my eyes. I knew there was only one thing left to complete the final phase. I had to make them believe I was about to make a big decision, one that would confuse them or give them hope, but would force them to act. And that action would be the final piece of evidence. I opened my eyes, looked up at the ceiling, and whispered, "Tomorrow, we start the final act." The next morning, I woke up before Olivia. Sunlight slipped through the curtains and lit her face, making her look peaceful, as if she had never shattered anyone's life. I looked at her for a few seconds, no longer feeling the stabbing pain I once felt. I only saw a stranger lying beside me, someone who no longer belonged to me, someone who didn't deserve what I once gave. When Olivia woke up, I told her gently, "I want to talk seriously tonight." Her face instantly turned pale. "About what?" "We'll talk tonight," I said, leaving that space in her mind on purpose. I knew that sentence would make them act. When a cheater thinks the secret is about to surface, they rush to save themselves, and that panic becomes the spark that ignites everything. Around noon, Olivia claimed she needed to buy art supplies for her students, but I knew where she was going. I didn't follow her. I didn't need to. I sat in my office, opened my phone, and as expected, Marcus called her 4 times in 10 minutes. Eventually, Olivia turned off location sharing and vanished from the map. "Good," I whispered. "Let them run straight into the trap." In the evening, Olivia came home past 7. She entered the house tense, forcing a trembling smile. What did you want to talk about?" I looked at her for a long time before answering. "I think we should reevaluate our relationship." Olivia was so terrified her hands shook. She immediately said, "What do you mean? Did I do something wrong?" I shook my head. "No, I just feel like we've drifted too far. If you're not happy, I'm willing to talk about divorce." She nearly burst into tears right then. Tears streamed down her face, not because of love, but because she feared the plan with Marcus would collapse sooner than they wanted. "No, I don't want a divorce. I'm just stressed lately." She grabbed my hand, trying to hold on to the image of a husband she once thought she could manipulate. I placed my hand on hers, squeezing gently, enough to make her believe I was torn between holding on and letting go. "I just want us to be honest," I said. "If there's something you're hiding, tell me." She cried harder. "I'm not hiding anything," and that was the moment I knew I was ready to end it. I stood up and grabbed my jacket. "I'm going out for a bit. Not sure how late I'll be back." Olivia stood up too, grabbing my sleeve. "Please don't scare me. You won't leave me, right?" I looked at her with the softest eyes and gave a small smile. "Of course not. I'm just meeting Jonathan." The sentence hit her like a bomb. She froze. I left the house, closing the door gently. Within 3 minutes, Olivia's phone started calling Marcus non-stop. I didn't need to listen. The recorder in the living room was already capturing it. I drove straight to Jonathan's office. When I arrived, he looked at me and said, "Everything you asked for is ready." I sat down and looked at the thick file on the table. Evidence of the affair, recordings, videos, GPS logs, messages, all organized like a complete case. "They'll meet tonight," I said, "and I want to be there." Jonathan nodded. "We'll do it legally. I already contacted the private investigation team. They're on their way." Around 8, Marcus texted me. "Bro, you free? Want to grab a drink?" I looked at the message and laughed. He was so desperate he was trying to keep me occupied. I didn't reply. Instead, Jonathan, the investigators, and I went straight to the hotel where everything started. When we arrived, Marcus and Olivia had just entered room 208. Everything repeated like a cycle of betrayal. This time, I didn't hide around the corner. I stood right at the door, Jonathan beside me, 2 investigators behind us. I knocked 3 times, no answer. I knocked again, harder. Marcus opened the door, half naked, face turning pale the moment he saw me. Olivia stood behind him, white as a sheet, trembling. I looked at them, not with anger, not with hatred, but with cold emptiness. "Shall we talk?" I said, my calm voice terrifying Olivia more than yelling ever could. Jonathan presented the documents, full of evidence, not missing a single detail. Marcus stuttered. Olivia fell to her knees, tears streaming. "Liam, listen to me. It's not what you think." I cut her off. "I'm not thinking anything. I'm just looking at the truth." Silence filled the room, thick enough to suffocate. Finally, I said the sentence that ended everything. Tomorrow, we go to court. I turned around and walked away without looking back. No need. The story had ended long ago. Today was just the period at the end of the sentence. As I left the hotel, the Santa Monica wind blew cold and strong. But for the first time in a long time, I felt lighter. No more pain, no more heaviness. Just the peace of someone who has let go of what no longer belonged to him. I knew tomorrow would be long, difficult, chaotic. But tonight, as I walked across the parking lot, I felt one thing clearly. I had taken myself back.